This workshop is about Cursor and Claude Code. I hope that most of you have already used both of them, or at least one of these tools. Personally, I mostly use Cursor. To be honest, over the past month, I've only had to do some programming a few times. Mostly, I've been updating all our materials. But I lean more towards Cursor, although I do have experience with Claude Code as well. What is the main difference between these two tools? Well, to sum it up, Cursor is a full-fledged IDE built on top of Visual Studio Code, while Claude Code is a terminal assistant that, nevertheless, has its own integrations with IDEs. Next, I'll try to explain and show what it looks like, how it differs in more detail. We'll just quickly go over all its features. My screen is currently being shared. Right now, you can see Visual Studio Code on the screen, and now you can see my cursor. Basically, yes, this is the IDE. You can download it from the Cursor website. It's free, or rather, it has a free trial mode. There are several subscription tiers. We'll talk more about the subscription later. Overall, Cursor's subscription is pretty straightforward. They basically charge you almost always based on how many tokens you burn with a specific model. In this regard, Claude Code has an interesting nuance, which I'll talk about later. So you download Cursor, install it, open it, and you get Visual Studio, just a bit restyled and looking a bit different. And basically, for anyone who's worked with Visual Studio Code, sorry, not Visual Studio, the interface will look familiar. My interface is a bit customized. I have a different theme setup, and the Tools menu on the left is vertical instead of horizontal, but those are just minor details. By the way, you can find any useful information about Cursor in our Telegram community chat. Specifically, in the Tools chat, I'll attach the link. There's a description of the Cursor tool itself, along with all the useful links. If you haven't checked it out yet, be sure to do so. There you'll find how to make the toolbar vertical, which useful extensions to use, links to all the reviews, all our internal workshops, everything is there. All right, we've opened Cursor. Let's go to Settings. What do we see in the settings? Well, there are actually quite a few settings here. We have a General tab with the main editor settings and account management. We have a Chat tab that configures chat behavior, since Cursor has an AI chat. Up here on the right, if we click, the chat opens where we can chat with the models. We can chat in different ways, backwards, sideways, and any way you like. Here you can also switch models and set various modes. Agent mode, non-agent mode. You can even create your own agents. And you can add images. Basically, you can do all sorts of things. Well, again, for those of you who use AI chats, this is all pretty straightforward. If you want to learn more about the chat feature in Cursor, be sure to check out the workshop with Valera. The chat settings are also available here in the Cursor settings. Also, unlike Claude Code, Cursor puts a strong emphasis on tabulation and autocompletion. Cursor can autocomplete code. When we write something, it suggests how to complete it. This is AI autocompletion, which Cursor has. Claude Code, of course, doesn't have it since it's a console terminal extension. At least for now, it can't integrate with IDs to the extent that it can provide us with autocompletion. Moreover, Cursor's autocompletion is super advanced. It has tab completions, so by pressing the tab key, you can do all sorts of things, modify code, basically edit and refactor code much faster. I won't go into detail about this right now either. It's already been discussed many times, both in club meetings, in the workshop, in the documentation, and it's covered in our courses. In general, for me, the biggest functional difference between Cursor and Claude Code is that Cursor has these tabs, which personally save me a lot of time. I like to spend time in files, dig around, get into the details, and refactor. Let's move on to the settings. I'll quickly go through all the settings now, and then maybe you can add anything I might have forgotten to mention. So chat, tab completion, and auto-completion. You can also choose models in Cursor. Here you have models that will be available for you to use both for auto-completion and in chat. Almost all the top models are available here. One unclear thing here is that supposedly you can add your own API keys, and many people think that these API keys then let you work with the models using your own key. But let me remind you that this feature only works if you don't have a subscription to Cursor. If you don't have a subscription, you really can use your key, and then the chat will work through your key. If you have a subscription to Cursor, like I do, and today we'll be testing the tools, specifically Cursor with a subscription, in that case, AP keys don't work here. In other words, with the paid version of Cursor, you can only use their models. In the chat, they're saying, apparently the agent doesn't work if you're using an external key. Yes, in the chat, only the SC mode works with an external key. Mode? Correct me if I'm wrong. As far as I know, the agent mode doesn't work. Well, the point is, there's really no reason to consider the API key mode in Cursor at all. It's better, if you want to work with keys, to install some proper open source tool instead of Cursor. An agent tool like KiloCode, RuCode, or Selene. You definitely don't need Cursor. It's more of a nominal feature. Next, the second feature that Claude Code doesn't have, and which Cursor is now pushing very, very hard, is background agents. Background agents are, in fact, the ability to run tasks on your repository on a virtual machine somewhere remotely on Cursor's cloud. Claude Code, by default, does not provide this kind of functionality. Cursor does provide it. Moreover, you can even manage these agents through the web interface via the Cursor website. If you go to cursor.com, you'll see that in addition to the dashboard, there's been a page with agents for quite some time now, with background agents running. So you can start a task in Cursor, continue interacting with it through your browser, right from your phone, assign tasks, or conversely, you can go to cursor.com in your browser, start a task there, and then open Cursor in your IDE and continue working with that task in the IDE. Recently, they added a new icon on the left, an all agents icon. By opening it, you can see all your agents, those currently running or those that have been launched before, switch to them, check what they've been doing, and assign a new task to that agent. Claude Code doesn't have this feature either. This is something Cursor offers. And there are also various integrations with services, like with GitHub. For background agents to work, you need to integrate Cursor with GitHub, meaning you have to link them. You can also link Cursor with Slack, and then background agents can be managed through Slack chat, meaning you can assign tasks via Slack chat. You can add tools via MCP and the contact protocol module. We all know what that is. Well, this feature is also available in Claude Code. So what else do we have? There are rules. You can set guidelines for how the code should look, how agents should write code for our project. Naturally, Cursor indexes our project before working with it, storing it in a local vector database. All of this is configured in the Index tab. Still, thirdly, in my opinion, the most notable distinguishing feature of Cursor compared to Claude Code is that Cursor can document external libraries that weren't properly represented in the model's training data. If the model doesn't understand well how to work with an external library, you can index that external library here. Add the doc, drop the link here, and Cursor's crawler will index the library, and then we can use rdoc to refer to this library in the chat. In Claude Code, and actually in other tools as well, for some reason this feature doesn't exist. The most I've seen is that in Windsurf, you can just parse the contents of a page via a link. That's it. And as for network settings, that's not really something we need unless we have some specific network requirements. There are also beta features. Here I have role access enabled, so I get the very latest versions of the Cursor IDE. Well, if you want stable releases, you can set it to default, but in practice, both the stable and role access releases of Cursor are always buggy. Yeah. In the chat, Alexi writes that background agents might not work with a corporate subscription since it depends on permission settings. Indeed, there are privacy settings in the General tab of Cursor. Here you can set several types of privacy, share data and privacy mode. That's it. At least on my personal subscription, I have these options. I think on the corporate subscription, there will be something else, something that really affects.
There's also legacy privacy.
I just don't know. Yeah, for some reason, it doesn't fit on my screen. Legacy privacy, does it work on corporate subscriptions too?
It probably only exists on corporate subscriptions.
Well, the difference is that, yes, in legacy mode, some features don't work for you because they simply can't function without saving data to the Cursor cloud. And this latest privacy mode, it's supposed to be secure, allegedly doesn't save any data in Cursor at all. Exactly. What else is worth mentioning here? I guess that's all for Cursor. So I highlight three main differences, aside from the fact that it's a separate IDE. Those are, it has advanced autocomplete with tabs, it has background agents, and it has convenient indexing of external libraries. Now's the time to add anything. If you want to mention something that Cursor has but Claude Code doesn't, something you like, something you consider a competitive advantage, you can do it in the chat or speak up.
Well, hello there, everyone all.
Hi.
I wanted to mention that Cursor has an auto mode, however basic it may be, and with the $20 subscription you can use it endlessly, even for $100 or $200 worth of usage, while only paying $20. So for some routine tasks, it handles them just fine, and it seems like you don't necessarily have to use...
This is about the subscription, right? Let's talk a bit more about the subscription later. I'll talk about Claude Code first, and then we'll discuss subscriptions separately because there's a lot to cover there. Someone in the chat made a good point. Are all VS Code plugins available on Claude? As for Claude, the VS Code plugins, those are plugins for the IDE, and they're not applicable to Claude Code, because Claude Code itself is a separate terminal utility for which there is a plugin to integrate it with VS Code. If you look at the question from another angle, are all VS Code plugins available for Cursor? Then the answer is no, because Cursor is branched from VS Code, but not from the very latest version, and it doesn't always update. First of all, it doesn't always update the core to the latest version. Accordingly, new plugins won't work in Cursor. For example, it's very difficult to run GitHub Copilot in Cursor. I made a separate video on this topic, and it's just not possible. Secondly, some plugins specifically restrict installation in Cursor or in anything that's not pure Visual Studio Code. For example, that's what Zencoder does. It requires authorization through its own servers. If the plugin detects that you're installing it through Cursor, it blocks you from doing so. There are these kinds of nuances.
And thirdly, most likely they're not using the native proprietary store, but either a fork of it or something else.
Yeah, that's actually a good question. I don't know. There are a ton of different extensions here. It looks like it's the default VS Code store.
But as far as I personally know, that particular action is absolutely not allowed in the context of forks. Yeah.
So basically, there are some issues with extensions. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. If you thought that everything available in VS Code is available here too, just because both are VS Code, that's not the case at all. I installed an extension from a file. Yeah, you can, I think there's a link somewhere on how to install the GitHub Copilot extension in Cursor. Let me write it down, and I'll just attach that link in the description for this video when it comes out. How do you install an extension in Cursor? Because there are a few different ways to do it. You can simply download the extension file and install it, or you can download the extension file, unzip it, tweak some settings, make a few modifications, and then try to install it. But with Copilot, for example, the GitHub Copilot extension, the problem is that there just aren't enough APIs in the newer versions of GitHub Copilot in Cursor for it to work properly. All right? Cursor uses the OpenVSX market. Thank you. That's true. So that's it for the description of Cursor. Now and at the end I also need to show you which version of Cursor we'll be using today, just to synchronize. It's version 1.4.2. That's the very latest one. So some features might be missing for you if you don't have the latest version. All right? I already managed to generate something while I was telling you about coding. What's up with Cloud Code and code indexing? We'll talk about that now. And next, Andre writes that file indexing in Cursor definitely happens on their servers. Here's the nuance. If you index external documentation through this index tab, then that documentation really is stored on Cursor's servers. It even says here when the last indexing took place. Sometimes when you add a new library here, it gets indexed almost instantly, literally in a second, because it's loaded from the cloud. But the documentation for your own project, I think it isn't stored in their cloud, it's just processed. Well, look, they do store some metadata after all. But still, the code itself remains local, so they process the whole project in the cloud. I mean, cloud-based processing. Accordingly, something does get sent there, but the code itself isn't stored there. Yes, all right. Now let's move on to Cloud Code. Cloud Code. Here, this is his website. This is how it looks by default. So what do we have here? Well, it's a command line utility, basically, which you install via npm install, or you can install it another way. And yes, the two creators of Cloud Code, good guys, who had left Cloud Code have already returned. So it's not an IDE, it's a terminal utility. And that's probably its biggest difference from Cursor. Basically, for me, the biggest limitation to getting started with Cloud Code was that it's a terminal utility, and I'm used to working in a UI. Nevertheless, Cloud Code has a lot of its own advantages and many settings. That's what we're going to look at today. Today, we're going to look at Cloud Code in Visual Studio Code. So I won't be running it directly in the terminal. We'll just be using it in the Visual Studio Code terminal. So my Visual Studio Code is pretty much a clean install. The only extension I have installed is it's the Cloud Code for VS Code extension, which integrates some ID features into the Cloud Code terminal. There are just a few integrations, but they really make life more convenient. This is the context of open tabs in the IDE. Cloud Code automatically recognizes them and shows a convenient diff, which is more comfortable than just viewing changes in the terminal. And there are also some shortcuts that are intercepted directly from the terminal, allowing you to work faster. Basically, that's all this extension does. This extension simply acts as a proxy between the Cloud Code terminal and Visual Studio Code. So Cloud Code, when you install this solution, you'll get a button like this. You can click it to immediately start a session with Cloud Code. Alternatively, you can just open the terminal yourself, open a new terminal, enter the Cloud command, and it will launch Cloud Code for you. I already have it pre-configured. If you're running it for the first time, it will first prompt you to set it up. Let's maybe go through this process together. Log out. So I've logged out, and when I launch Cloud Code, the setup options appear. I choose. First, you need to select the mode. Dark mode just means it will use a dark theme. Next, it will prompt you to log in either through your Anthropic console account or via a Cloud Code subscription. We'll talk a bit more about that later. If you have a subscription, it's better to log in with your subscription. That's what I would recommend. If you don't have a subscription, like I don't, then you log in through your console account. So in my case, it will basically register the key in the API for me, and I'll be working with Cloud Code using my private key, my personal key that's stored in my Cloud Account's API keys.
There's also another option that's not shown on this page when you log in, and that's Amazon Bedrock. If your company has a subscription,
that would also use a key, right?
Well, yes, but it might very well turn out that the company's established policy is that we exclusively want to utilize our very own proprietary systems and resources. Models.
Rodion writes in the chat that you can also log in through Google Cloud as well. So basically, it's either through keys or through a native subscription from Cloud Code. From Cloud. I'm authorizing with a key, and at the same time, let's see how much money we'll burn today. That's important. And that's it. Authorization is complete. I'm going back. He leaks the key. No, he didn't leak it. It's no big deal. That's it. Next, we've actually logged in, right? Use Cloud Code. Next, it will prompt you. It will see that I'm running in the terminal in IDH and will suggest setting up terminal integration with IDH. Okay, and that's it. So we've entered Cloud Code. So what can this Cloud Code do? All its commands are available via /. There actually aren't that many of them. Let me list all these commands for you and we'll see what it can do. Add directory adds an extra working tab, because by default, Cloud Code works with the files in the folder where it is located and any subfolders. So we launch it from a certain folder, we go into the folder and start it. It creates a few configuration files there and works with that folder. It assumes that there are code files in it. You can also add more folders. Cloud also allows you to create different agents. Today, we'll even try to create one. This is basically the equivalent of those mods in Cursor. When we click the pencil icon in agents, you can create a pencil icon somewhere around here. Add custom mods. We can create custom agents in Cursor. Now you can do the same thing in Cloud Code. Moreover, As far as I understand, the functionality is exactly the same because neither in Claude Code nor in Cursor can these agents be triggered automatically for a task yet. You have to select a specific agent either in Cursor or in Claude Code and specify which agent should perform the task. Of course, it would be nice if it could select automatically. In the chat, Andre is asking if anyone actually uses this in practice. Well, today we'll try to create a testing agent for ourselves and see how it goes. In practice, I know that in Cursor, agents are used by those who employ the memory bank approach, because for memory bank, you actually need to create separate agents so they can update documentation or perform additional tasks. But overall, I probably don't use them on large projects. Maybe there is a point to it. Let me know. If anyone is using specific agents, what do you use them for? All right, okay. Bug. The system menu lets you send a bug report to Claude Code if you encounter a bug there. Clear wipes the context of the current session. Compact takes your current conversation, summarizes it, and creates a new dialogue based on that summary. Config simply changes the terminal's theme. Cost lets you check the cost of the current conversation. Doctor is also a system command. It quickly checks if everything is set up correctly in Claude Code. Exit exits the Claude Code terminal mode. Export to export the chat, it doesn't matter. Help is self-explanatory. Hooks. When Claude Code executes a task or a specific command, it can trigger additional actions in the terminal through hooks. Accordingly, there are several events here to which you can attach these hooks. Claude Code, like Cursor, is an agent-based tool that writes code turnkey. Accordingly, it calls tools under the hood for reading files, editing files, maybe some NSPs. If we add them, you can add a command either before or after calling the tools, which will always be executed. I don't know, maybe something like so that files are always formatted, or to remove any unnecessary characters from a file, anything you want. Basically, you can specify any command that will be triggered by a specific event. There are a total of 5 events. Before running the tools, after running the tools, when Claude Code sends a notification. And then there's user prompt submit, when you send a prompt to Claude Code, and when you start a new session. In the chat, Pasha writes that he uses agents for a bot that plans but never actually does anything. The second one executes according to the plan. Interesting. All right. Let's move on to the commands. That was hooks. ID is a setting for integration with the IDE, but honestly, it's a pretty useless command. And the init command initializes claude.md. Claude.md is, they call it memory, but in reality, it's the rules from Cursor. It's a file that's always in the agent's field of view, and information from this file is constantly being used. Today, we're going to fill out this file together, at least in part, from a practical perspective. Once again, in Cursor, the equivalent is rules, Cursor rules. In Cursor, they're a bit more elaborate, a bit more flexible than in Claude. But in both cases, they're essentially markdown files that are always present in the agent's context. Agents try to constantly use information from there. Next, installing the GitHub application is a separate topic. Claude Code for us, now it's not just a terminal tool, it's grown a bit beyond being just a terminal tool. The folks at Anthropic have also made a good integration with GitHub. They took the code, the Claude Code, its code base, and put it into a GitHub application. This GitHub application can be connected to your repositories, and it will work either through your Claude Code subscription or using your Anthropic API key. What can this thing do? It can review pull requests in the repositories you connect it to. It can be triggered using rclaude. You can call Claude Code directly in pull requests or comments right on GitHub. It will comment for you there, give you some advice on your code, and so on. They also have a feature. You can customize all of this as well. In general, they call it Claude Code Action. It's a separate repository. You can check out these actions in the repository, download them, and configure them for yourself. In our 14th meeting, just one meeting ago, we had a small practical session where we talked about how you can customize these actions. It's a pretty cool thing. You can actually build a pretty solid pipeline where Claude Code will review your code and even make some changes on its own. And all of this will be available to you either through your key or your subscription. That's it. You can even configure this thing a bit through the terminal version of Claude Code. They've also added, well, I'll talk about that later. Login and logout are straightforward. Entering and exiting the terminal session, login and logout, to log in and log out. You can add NSP tools to Claude Code. Memory, it's odd, or maybe not odd, but memory is basically a duplicate of the init command, because init creates a claude.md file for you, and memory essentially just adds to or overwrites that file. And there are several types of memory here. You can create several types of code files, a global one for the entire project, claude.md, then a local one, which will be claude.local.md, and in a hidden folder called .claude, you can create a user file. I haven't quite figured out yet how these files relate to each other. So, for example, if I have a user claude.md and a project claude.md, will they merge or will they override each other based on priority? Maybe someone has experience with this.
It seems like they just get concatenated, but it's not clear in what order.
That's the simplest option, yes. And there, the order doesn't even matter. That depends on how the agent will interpret all that information.
Order is very important for the prompt.
Why?
Well, basically, it fundamentally changes how the vectors are precisely arranged.
In that sense. Well, yeah, probably. If you have it written exactly the same, and if in the file with lower priority, that rule must absolutely be used, is written earlier, then, and in the second file it just says use, then the neural network will think it should use the one that says absolutely must. Well, the fact is that all this memory, it's all stored in claude.md user project. Well, probably, if they have user memory, then somehow it must be able to merge with project memory. Basically, I wouldn't write the same information there. Yeah, let's move on. They really have a lot of commands now. There used to be fewer. Migrate installer is about the ability to work with Claude Code either locally from the folder with your project, or you can install it globally as a global PM dependency, and then it will be available everywhere, in all folders. It's not that important. You can change the model in Claude Code. By the way, that's an important difference. I forgot to mention it in Cursor. Another major difference between Cursor and Claude Code, the fourth one, is that in Cursor you can choose any model they have available, and there are many. In Claude Code, only two models are available, Haiku 4 and Opus. Well, that's not surprising. By the way, they've added Opus 4.1. Take a look. Wow, that's expensive. That's not surprising because Claude Code is designed to distribute the model from Anthropic, which is the Sonnet model. It's worth mentioning that this is a downside of Claude Code because sometimes Sonnet models get stuck in loops or don't work the way you want them to. Sometimes you want more thoughtful reasoning, but those are expensive, like GPT-3. And in Claude Code, you don't have the option to choose a different model. But in Cursor, you do.
Not directly.
Could you explain, please?
Well, there's MCP, which connects models and the others.
Oh, right. Using MCP is a good option. Are there any ready-made repositories on hand to take a look at?
I don't have any on hand, but I've definitely seen such use cases out in the wild.
Interesting. I'd probably say here that the Anthropic team still tweaks their prompts internally, including for the cloud model, so I'm not sure. Well, it's worth a try. But the fact is, out of the box, only cloud is available to us. And what else do we have left to consider? You can meticulously grant specific permissions, carefully tweak a little bit which particular tools cloud can effectively utilize, and precisely determine which commands it is authorized to execute. And probably also the necessary permissions for the pull request commit. The PR commit command lets you gather information about your pull request from GitHub. Release notes, obviously, are changes in the cloud code. Summary is a self-summary of your current conversation. You can also do a review to review a pull request. And recently, they introduced a new feature. It's called Security Review, literally just last week. This is a powerful and comprehensive tool that meticulously takes your currently changed files, specifically those that significantly differ from the main branch, and thoroughly checks them for various potential security vulnerabilities, including but not limited to dangerous SQL injections and all sorts of other critical code errors. In general, there's a big article about this from Anthropic. You can read about how it works, and it also operates either by subscription or by key. In other words, it's available directly in the tool. This is a feature that Cursor doesn't have. To be fair, I should mention that Cursor has what's called the Cursor bug bot. Here's its documentation. I'll send it to the chat now. This thing is similar to Cloud Code actions. So it reviews your pull request and gives code recommendations. Then you can click something like, please fix this for me, dear Cursor, and it will use background agents to launch the task, try to fix everything, and eventually give you a pull request with the correction. But this bug bot, yes, you can also control this bug bot through the Cursor website interface. Here are the agents, and these agents are situated somewhere within the comprehensive and interactive dashboard. Specifically, within the detailed and user-friendly dashboard interface, you will find BugBot, an essential component that plays a crucial role in the system's operations. Here you can see how much money it has spent and which repositories it is attached to, but BugBot costs money. It costs $40 a month. That's it. And I can't say I've heard any particularly great reviews about it. When it was first being tested, you could run it one time for a certain fee. One run cost about $3, $4, sometimes $8. Well, somehow it just didn't catch on with me. If anyone has BugBot working, if someone is using it, let me know what you think. And if not, then probably not. The thing is, Cloud Code has a complete replacement for this BugBot. That's Cloud Code Action plus Security Check. These two things completely replace BugBot. You don't need to pay an extra $40 a month. And basically that's it. There's a status command that gives you system information about the current state of the dialog, what's happening in your Cloud Code, and that's it. Well, you can also switch to Vim mode for those who like Vim, so that the Vim editor launches by default in code. So now, what are the advantages of Cloud Code over Cursor? To summarize, first of all, it's console-based. That's both its advantage and disadvantage, and also an advantage. It's a disadvantage because there's no proper IDE UI. If you're used to a UI, the advantage is that Cloud Code can run not only in Visual Studio Code, but anywhere there's a terminal, including JetBrains IDEs. There are also small plugins for JetBrains that provide this minor integration. So you get a nice div view and key bindings. Accordingly, if you use Cloud Code, JetBrains is probably a good alternative. At least that's what some of our guys do. Next, you can use this GitHub Cloud Code Action plus Security Check as a replacement for the Cursor backbot. And basically, you can listen to the 14th call. There's a timestamp for it. Our club member Chaina told us how he uses these actions in his pipeline. It's actually a pretty good thing. And the third advantage, the biggest advantage of Cloud Code, moving on to the next topic, is the subscription. Cloud Code can work on a subscription basis. There are subscriptions for $20, $100, and $200. And starting from about $100, the subscription really saves you money. What does that mean? It means that if you use an API key with Cloud Code for $100, you'll actually get a lot less work done than if you bought a subscription for $100. Why does this happen? Because Anthropic wants to capture and take over a larger share of the developer market with Cloud Code. That's why through the subscription, they sell their API requests cheaper than if you buy them directly. And this is a clear advantage over Cursor, because when we use Anthropic's models with Cursor, it bills them by tokens at API prices. But Cloud Code, if we have a Cloud Code subscription, bills them at some internal rates. From what I gathered on Reddit, it's about 5 times cheaper. So for $100 on a subscription, you get 5 times more tokens than you would for the same $100 if you bought them directly through a Cloud Code key. So that's precisely how the subscription service works. Perhaps you have something further to add regarding the subscription? If anyone has anything to add? Just today, I noticed in Cursor that for $20, you get an extra 20 as a bonus. Feels like they're going to start cutting the limits, the $20 ones. Well, I think
actually, with Cloud Code 2 until August 27th, and then starting from the 27th, they're going to start cutting the limits.
They're all starting to cut the limits because everyone realizes they're still operating at a loss. And they're probably going to keep cutting those limits and raising the pricing plans more and more. The fact that we used Cursor for $20 and there used to be no limits at all was because they were trying to capture the market, getting developers and companies hooked on their product. Now they can raise prices to at least try to turn a profit. At least that's the theory most people believe. As for the subscription cost in Cursor, that's also pretty unclear because they keep changing their policy on how they bill accounts and subscriptions practically every week. In my dashboard, as you can see right now, I'm being billed. I have a subscription for $20. With my subscription, I have 500 requests available. For those of you who are new, who have just purchased a new subscription in Cursor, you most likely don't have these $500 because that's an old feature, and I think you can't even switch to it anymore. I could be wrong, or maybe you can. Maybe it was possible somewhere. So now opt in to new pricing. If I click it, I'll lose this 500 request limit, and supposedly I'll be able to use Cursor as much as I want. The problem is that limits will be enabled for me, and I think right now they reset every 5 hours. I could be wrong, but after a certain period, these limits run out, and on the $20 subscription, they run out very quickly. And when they run out, you get moved to the slow queue. Or if you have pay-as-you-go enabled, money starts being deducted from your card. I didn't like that option, so I switched back to the old one, where I can just burn through all my 500 requests for $20, even in 20 minutes, if my work speed allows it. Switching.
Doesn't it ask for confirmation more often in that mode?
Ask for confirmation about what?
Well, like there were 150 requests for a while, and you give it a task, and instead of just doing it, it says, I've made a plan for you just in case, confirm that everything is correct. And it would burn through 2 requests like that.
Yeah, of course. It does ask. It does. Cursor can execute no more than 25 commands, for one thing. Secondly, now it creates plans and asks for confirmation. But that's just Cursor's billing right now. It's counted as requests, but the word request is kind of strange here. It's not an API request as such. It's the number of tokens spent for a specific API provider. On their website, well, I probably won't find it right now, but somewhere on their site, there was a comparison table. Basically, if we're working with the model,
if you click on usage, you'll see the statistics right there.
Include Pro.
No, wait, I'll send a screenshot from the top section right now. Right here, it actually lists for some of them which models these potentially are. I'll send it.
That's on the new one, probably this one. That's when you switch to the new pricing display and it'll show all that stuff. Mine shows it like that too, but it doesn't show me that screen with the 500 requests.
Well, let me switch over now. Damn, I'm afraid I won't be able to revert back, but okay, I'll switch. Hopefully I can revert. All right, okay.
I don't think you'll be able to revert.
No, I should be able to revert, but nothing changed in the stats. So what's the deal there? The thing is, they count a specific number of tokens per request, not just the API request itself. And the number of tokens per request depends on which model is being used. If the model is super large and expensive, then the number of tokens per request will be cheaper. More expensive, I mean? So this means that requests are counted by the number of tokens used, not by the number of API requests. If the model asks for clarification, then yes, it will be more expensive than if it didn't, but not necessarily twice as much, just by the number of tokens that the follow-up response costs. All right, now.
I sent over what it looks like, so you don't have to switch screens.
Yes, indeed, absolutely. Input, output, and the associated cost to you, the user.
And I have a feeling those prices are coming for me soon. At least the ones he lists in the second to last column.
So basically, why is cost to you 0 everywhere?
That's because I haven't enabled that mode. Max?
Okay. Well, anyway, they keep changing it all the time. Just a month ago in the usage section, they still showed the number of requests instead of tokens. Now they don't show the number of requests anymore. Basically, they're trying to, I won't switch screens. Damn it. Was it possible to switch just once?
For sure. They just did it for old users, so you could just go over and that's it.
No, the thing is, as soon as this new pricing plan appeared, I switched back to the old one, then back again. Basically, I switched twice, but now, well, whatever, never mind. We'll just live by the new rules. So over time, they even removed the ability to switch for old users. Stas is saying he has the same thing in his chat. Well, that's another downside of the Cursor team. They keep stringing us along all the time. It's not the first time they've been caught doing this, removing some numbers, shuffling things around, taking away features, and then not mentioning it anywhere. They do this all the time. Anthropic, on the other hand, hasn't really been known for that kind of thing. That's why I said that with Cursor, every new release comes with bugs and some weird quirks. Basically, as for the main differences and main features, that's probably about it. And considering how complicated Cursor's pricing is right now, and the fact that Cursor definitely buys Anthropic's models at Anthropic's API price, not at the special discounts used in Claude Code, then financially, if you're spending more than $100 a month on Cursor, it makes sense to take a look at Claude Code. But keep in mind that there are certain features that Claude Code doesn't have, such as tabulation, autocomplete for documentation indexing, and background agents. If you don't need these features, then it makes sense to switch to Claude Code. That's probably how I would put it.
Windsurf for free tabulation?
Yes, you can install Claude Code in Windsurf, and in Windsurf you can also use free tabulation. You can install SuperMaven as well. I think it also provides free tabulation, or maybe it's even key-based. You can even try local tabulation, but in terms of its capabilities, Windsurf's tabulation is about on par with Cursor's. Windsurf's cursors make the coolest tabulations, so yes, Windsurf is better. On a free Windsurf account, you'll get tabs and they'll last you a long time.
Here's a question. Is it possible in Claude Code to run 2 or 3 tasks at the same time within a single project? With Cursor, I think just recently you could switch between chats and it allows you to do that before they were queued, but now you can actually run them simultaneously. Like you give one to one module, then switch to another.
Yeah, the chat. Cursor has actually allowed you to do that for quite a while now.
It used to literally pause, not just pause, but almost stop the task. That wasn't so long ago.
Well,
in the instructions for Ploskotov, there's a recommendation to use work3, a ready-made function that lets you have several trees, like different branches in different folders. No, but here you see you have one project open in one branch, you're working on different zeros, and you're working on them simultaneously. You don't have to switch, you don't have to wait, they're not queued. That wasn't possible before. In theory, I think you could run them in 2 terminals, but the question is whether they would actually be editing in different places.
Yeah. The only option is to run several terminals. Within a single terminal, you basically have one session, meaning one dialogue. But in Cursor, every new tab is a separate session with its own terminals running.
Plus agents.
And agents, of course. On the other hand, tell me, what kind of tasks do you have where you really need to run 2 chats in parallel? Because we tried to figure out such tasks during our calls, and we didn't really come up with any.
This is more about discussing development. Sometimes I get a bit into the architecture side of the project. For example, I have, the latest device. I divided it into subtasks, into submodules. It's a microservices architecture, and it's in one project, but the microservices are separated into different folders. So naturally, they only interact with each other. Here, I launch one microservice to run, then I switch to another chat for another microservice. When it's tough with the code, you have to read through it carefully, but when you're building the architecture itself, it turns out to be quite convenient. That's it. So basically, you save on the context window, and accordingly, you save tokens and payment.
Well, actually, look, if you're working in some terminal, so for me, Warp is basically just creating several terminal sessions, launching code in each one, and now you already have an interface almost like Cursor, where you can switch between the codes and see what they're doing.
When you have 4 monitors and all that, yeah, it's convenient there. But when you're on the go, having just a 17-inch MacBook at hand isn't always convenient.
No, but it's basically the same thing as in Cursor, just several tabs in your terminal. Just like in Cursor, you have multiple tabs. There's no difference at all.
That's true too.
Yeah. So, Andre, you're writing about, how does Andre put it? What about the killer feature in Claude Code, reverse stage? It just came out recently, I think. Can you join in by voice and tell us about it? What is this reverse stage?
Cursor has it too. I mean, you switch, go through the chat, go back.
Yeah. Cursor has checkpoints too. That's really convenient.
You just click on the dialogue itself and enter something, and it asks you whether to continue, revert to the previous state, or continue without reverting. It doesn't just change the context window, it actually changes the files themselves.
You don't even have to enter anything there. You just like click on the previous dialogue and that's it.
Yeah. You just hit revert and that's all. And it rolls back all the files. I just don't have any current tasks right now. Yeah, right.
Andre says he was asking about Claude Code not making a statement.
Oh, you were asking about Claude Code? Okay. Then I have a question for the experts. Does Claude Code have a revert feature, like checkpoints? I think they wrote something recently that they added that feature.
I posted in the chat, there were some hints about it, and it looks like there's already a button in the config. And if you write the config, there will be checkpoints. But it seems like they haven't enabled it yet. So everything is ready, but it's not fully implemented yet.
Well, today when we start coding, we'll see what features Claude Code offers us in the chat. I think when you press escape, it suggests reverting somewhere or doing something. But I haven't really tried it out yet. We'll see during the practical part. For now, Ignat says the most reliable revert in Claude Code is still Git. Well, basically.
Actually, with this revert, you end up having to commit more often. You do something, switch to the chat, accidentally press something, and it reverts your changes along with the files and your reasoning.
Yeah.
And literally with the cursor, after an update, the old chats from, say, 2 weeks ago, they just don't open anymore. Apparently, they're still changing the format.
Yeah, their chats are constantly being updated and they won't open. Plus, their chats are tied to the workspace. A workspace is it's an abstraction at the core level of Visual Studio Code. If you remove the workspace from the file tree, all your chats will be lost as well. Just in case, you know. And you won't be able to recover them anymore.
Listen, I also wanted to ask about the limits. So just for the past month, I've been actively using Cursor. It's my first month, so that's why I want to ask. So you mentioned there are like slow requests, right? Are there any daily limits? It's just that over the past month, I haven't run into any. I just noticed that the auto mode is completely unlimited and you can use it as much as you want, 24/7. But these particular limits, which are carefully chosen by the model itself, that is to say, they worked perfectly for me. Today, I honestly don't even know how many specific requests I actually made. I simply did not run out of my allocated limit money, which was $20. They certainly did not stop, and they absolutely did not freeze at all. It's simple.
Wait, do you have a subscription or not?
Subscription. My subscription is the basic $20 one. So my current pricing policy is that in auto mode, I can use as much as I want without any limits. Right now, I have $100.
Look, here's the thing.
Auto?
Oh, a full $100, really? But I'm not even saying it's $100.
Well, I mean, they sent a screenshot, right? Here, Lesha, who sent the screenshot, by the way? Oh, so they sent a screenshot, right? I've got the same thing going on. So for this month, and the month isn't even over yet, I still have about 5 days left on my subscription. This is my first subscription. And right now, in auto mode, I've burned through $100 worth of tokens. Yeah, and on all the other paid subscriptions, today I even checked on purpose, like on Gemini, probably 2.5.
Yeah, I get it. They write it as a bonus, right? Like in parentheses, this bonus.
It's not really a bonus. It's more like within the subscription, they give you a limit. You can burn through those $20 on any model you want. And after that, either you pay with this billing, auto billing, or basically you just can't.
Most likely, it's actually pretty hard to figure out how it all works right now. They keep changing everything, but most likely this is how it works. When you use not the auto mode, but specific models, you get billed for the cost of those models. These models are usually paid. The top models like Sonnet 4, Sonnet 4.1, O3, Gemini 2.5, and Pro, they are definitely paid, O3 as well. Accordingly, they completely burn through your requests from your subscription, and then you either hit a slow queue or limits, and you either wait until your limits are refreshed, which happens every few hours. Previously, it was every 5 hours. And then you are able to use these models again. This is with the new subscription, where you no longer have 500 requests per month for $20, like I used to have.
I just mean to say that it truly seems like now they have completely removed the fast request quota. And basically, if you happen to have $20 available, you can certainly burn through them all at once. And you will always, without a doubt, have fast requests readily available. And let's say when you burn through your $20 subscription, then they start putting you in the slow queue.
Maybe they've changed it in that direction. At least they haven't mentioned anything about it. There's also the nuance that you have auto models enabled When you set it to auto model, you might not notice when it switches you to the dumber models. Meaning you hit the limits for the bigger models and the cursor automatically starts switching you to their internal deployed models, which cost them nothing and are a bit dumber. You can notice this by the quality of the responses, but if the quality of the responses hasn't changed for you, like everything is still written well, then I honestly don't even know what to say, but that's how it used to work.
Honestly, I don't know. I just don't have enough experience working with Cursor to really notice the difference, you know? But it seems like you can basically get by in auto mode too. I mean, I wouldn't say it generates poorly, not at all. So I can actually do my tasks with it, just like with the regular ones.
Yeah, no problem. If auto mode is enough for you, then that's totally fine. Well, for example, I try to handle big features in the bot, and for those I need either O3 or the latest Sonnet models. If I use, say, even Sonnet 3.7 or some less powerful models, it's not enough for me. They start to forget things quickly and lose track of the context. I also have...
Yeah, that's true. I agree. I do the same when I need a lot of context. I, for example, use Gemini 2.5 in maximum mode with a 1,000,000 token context window, and then I can actually design some big features. That's right. Or, for example, ask O3 about architecture. But overall, for this kind of work, like fixing something, writing something, doing something, adding some features, I haven't really noticed much difference between, say...
Yeah. Auto mode for small features is totally fine. The main thing is not to forget to turn it off when you start working on big or complex features, so you don't end up getting frustrated that the cursor can't write anything properly.
Yeah, true. Well, it all depends on the prompts again.
Right.
You can write a prompt so bad that even the most awesome model like GPT-5 will mess everything up.
By the way, people in the chat are saying that GPT-5 is being shown online right now. So, right after our call, I think you'll be able to try it out already. They usually add them pretty quickly. All right? Good. If you have any more questions or comments about the differences between Cursor and Claude Code, feel free to add them, because I've covered everything I wanted to say about my impressions and the theory.
By the way, does Claude Code have some kind of auto mode, like an unlimited option, or is everything only on paid requests?
No. Everything there is on paid models. There are 2 models there, as I showed earlier. Previously, there was Sonnet 3.7, Sonnet 4, and now, as far as I remember, we have Sonnet 4 and Sonnet 4.1. That's it. Not Sonnet Opus.
4.1 Opus.
Yes, 4.1 Opus. And as far as I remember, it can automatically choose which of these models to use. At least before, Claude Code could choose to use either Sonnet 4 or Opus. Now, I think it won't switch to Opus because it's more expensive. By how much? 5 times. So here, literally.
It seems like even for some simple tasks like it's used.
Yeah, they wrote about that. By the way, another big difference in the paradigms between Cursor and Claude Code is that Cursor really provides a huge toolkit for developers who like to dig into the code, like to tweak settings, and try to influence code generation as much as possible. Whereas Claude Code, on the contrary, says, here's an input field where you enter what you need done, and we'll decide under the hood which model to use and how to process it. We'll just give you a ready-made solution. So in that sense, Claude Code has more of a web code, a paradigm. Less.
But at the same time, Claude Code does have an SDK, and you can...
Yes, you can kind of sort of use it as a backend in your pipelines, in your applications. Really, yes.
So in short, can we say that Claude Code is like macOS and Cursor is like Windows? To some extent?
To some extent, yes. Right. Vasily writes, I get a usage limit reset notification in Claude Code at 9 p.m. Can you explain how they determine the subscription limits and over what periods? Like, is it every 5 hours or what? Well, I mentioned the 5-hour thing in Cursor, but in Claude Code, to be honest, I don't remember. You need to check the documentation to see how their limits are reset. But it's pretty straightforward. The number of requests apparently resets once a day, since they're telling you your limits will reset at 9 p.m. every day.
They also have 5-hour sessions there.
Huh?
They also have 5-hour sessions there.
Ah, well then, okay.
And they round it to the exact hour. So it will be exactly 9.
So at 9 p.m., the current session ends, and after that, you'll have another 5 hours during which you can send a certain number of requests. How many? Maybe someone knows off the top of their head. Fee? We really need to check the documentation.
Something equivalent to about $30.
One session is $30? That's what I heard.
Yeah, roughly. So if you were using the API, you would have burned through it. At least that's what they showed. They show what you would have spent. When I hit the limit on the API, it's usually around $30.
Wow, that's actually pretty good.
That's with the $100 subscription.
That's actually really good.
In Cloud Code notifications, there's a very convenient notification option available right within the settings, which functions in precisely the same manner as it does with the terminal, providing a seamless and integrated experience. So maybe
In the settings file or in the command settings?
/settings/config, and there you'll find notifications.
Ah, right. We didn't check the config. You can enable or disable to-do lists and checkpoints, by the way.